2:45 a.m. The house was silent, the kind of silence that feels almost tangible, wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. Outside, the world was still, with only the occasional rustle of leaves or distant hum of a passing car breaking the quiet. The red numbers glowed ominously on the alarm clock, casting an eerie light across the room. It was a stark reminder of the ungodly hour, a time when most people are deep in their dreams. It was the deepest part of the night, the hour when sleep felt the heaviest. The shadows in the room seemed to grow longer, darker, as if they were alive, creeping closer with each passing second. A low rumble vibrated on the nightstand, jolting me awake. The sudden noise was jarring, cutting through the stillness like a knife. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline surging through my veins. My heart pounded in my ears as I fumbled for my phone. The screen lit up, casting a harsh light in the dark room. My fingers trembled as I reached for it, the sense of urgency growing with each passing second. An unknown number. Who would call at this hour? The question echoed in my mind, bringing with it a wave of anxiety. The unknown can be terrifying, especially in the dead of night. Hesitation gripped me. A cold dread settled in my stomach. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What if it was an emergency? What if something had happened to a loved one? But curiosity, or perhaps a morbid sense of obligation, won out. I couldn't ignore the call, not at this hour. I had to know who it was and why they were calling. I pressed the green answer button. The sound of my own breathing filled the room as I waited for the voice on the other end. What would they say? What news would they bring? The anticipation was almost unbearable. Silence. For a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing but the faint static hiss of the line. Then, a voice, a hushed whisper, barely audible. "Do you know who this is?"
Do you know who this is?
The voice sent chills down my spine. It was vaguely familiar, yet impossible to place. Fear tightened its grip, squeezing the air from my lungs. "Hello?" I choked out, my voice trembling. "Hello?"
You should be careful. I'm closer than you think.
Panic surged through me. It was an overwhelming, all-consuming fear that gripped my heart and refused to let go. I could feel my pulse quicken, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum. The room felt colder, the shadows darker, as if they were closing in on me. I scrambled out of bed, my blood turning to ice. My movements were frantic, driven by an instinctual need to escape whatever unseen terror lurked in the darkness. The floor was cold beneath my feet, grounding me in the reality of the moment. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It was as if my body was reacting to a presence that my eyes couldn't see. Every nerve was on high alert, every sense heightened. I rushed to the window, my breath catching in my throat. The air felt thick, almost suffocating as I peered out into the night. My heart pounded louder, a relentless reminder of my fear. The street below was deserted, illuminated only by the flickering orange glow of the streetlights. No sign of anyone. The emptiness of the scene did little to calm my nerves. Instead, it amplified the eerie silence that surrounded me. Had I imagined it? Was the fear playing tricks on my mind? Doubt began to creep in, mingling with the fear, creating a cocktail of emotions that left me feeling unsteady. I scanned the shadows, searching for any movement, any indication that I was truly alone. The silence was deafening. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath along with me. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside felt magnified. I strained my eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything that would explain the terror I felt, but there was nothing, just shadows and silence. Section 4. The footsteps below. Suddenly, a noise from downstairs shattered the stillness. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, they creaked across the floorboards directly below my room. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, straining to hear, my senses on high alert. The footsteps paused right below my window. Then silence, heavy and suffocating. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. I didn't dare breathe. The silence stretched on, an eternity contained within seconds. Section 5. A glimmer in the dark. Just when I thought I could bear it no longer, a flicker of movement outside caught my eye. A glint of metal in the dim light filtering through the curtains. Someone was out there, watching me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was not alone. Fear, raw and primal, coursed through me. I stumbled back from the window, my legs threatening to give way. Section 6. False dawn, lingering fear. The rest of the night was an agonizing blur. I huddled in the corner of my room, clutching a blanket around me for what felt like an eternity. The first rays of dawn brought a sliver of relief, but the terror lingered. Sunlight spilled into my room, chasing away the shadows. I forced myself to my feet, every muscle in my body aching with tension. The house was silent, deceptively peaceful. Section 7. The other side of the line. As I tried to piece together the events of the night, my gaze fell on my phone, lying shattered on the floor. The room was eerily silent, the only sound being the faint hum of the air conditioner. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in the quiet room. The shattered screen seemed to mock me, a silent witness to the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. The screen was dark, the call long ended. I reached down, my fingers trembling as I picked up the broken device. The weight of it felt different, heavier somehow, as if it carried the burden of the night's events. I turned it over in my hands, trying to make sense of the fragmented memories that flitted through my mind, and then I noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible detail that sent a shiver down my spine. The phone displayed not an incoming call, but an outgoing one. My mind raced, trying to recall the moments leading up to this discovery. Had I been the one to make the call? And if so, to whom? The phone displayed not an incoming call, but an outgoing one. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't answered a call that night. I had made one, but why? And to whom? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. I hadn't answered a call that night. I had made one. The implications of this revelation were staggering. Had I been the one to initiate the events that had transpired? The thought was almost too much to bear. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the horrifying truth. And a chill ran down my spine as I realized the horrifying truth. The whispered threat, the footsteps, the glint of metal, it all started to make sense. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they formed was more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The whispered threat, the footsteps, the glint of metal, it wasn't meant for me. The realization was like a punch to the gut. I had been the one outside the window, watching, waiting, but for what and why? The questions continued to haunt me as I tried to make sense of the night's events. It wasn't meant for me. I was the one outside the window. The thought was both terrifying and confusing. What had driven me to such lengths, and what had I hoped to achieve? The answers eluded me, hidden in the shadows of my mind. But one thing was clear. The events of that night had changed everything. I was the one outside the window. The realization was both shocking and sobering. As I stood there, staring at the shattered phone in my hand, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The events of that night had set something in motion, something that I couldn't stop. And as the dawn began to break, I knew that I had to face the consequences of my actions.